What does it take to get beyond the damage of words? I'm Katrina Collier. Join me each week as I explore what it takes to step into a happier future. My guests are sharing their stories of when they realised that they needed help and what it took to take that first step, so that you leave inspired and maybe even start on your own path to self-love, care, compassion, and of course, happiness. So without further ado, let's hear their stories. George Bannister, welcome to Beyond the Damage of Words podcast. You are the fastest guest I've had booked. I'm so thrilled. I mean, we just met on the weekend and here you are booked.
Well, cool. I always go on the theory, if you're not fast, you're last. So I don't want to be last. Therefore, I'm fast.
Absolutely. Actually, it was really cool because you were one of, I should say technically we met because I was just about to pull Post-it notes off your butt, but somehow stopped myself. But because we met at the Hay House UK Writers Workshop. And you were like one of a handful of boys in the room, which is just crazy,
I was one of 5 or 6 token boys out of about 300 people, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, which is crazy. It just shows how many more men need to do this work. Anyway, As I always do with this podcast, I just get straight on with it. What led you into healing? Why did you start working on yourself? What happened?
The reason I went into healing, it certainly wasn't a conscious decision. It wasn't, I woke up one day and went, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to heal myself. Yeah, that'll be my task for the day.
This sounds familiar.
Yeah, I was going to say I was led there, but I wasn't even led there. I was dragged there, I think, through, I suppose the thing that started me off was my background is heavily addiction-based. Fair old amount of trauma mixed in along the way. I believe that I had undiagnosed PTSD growing up as a child. Only kind of learnt that at the age of about 37 when I went, oh, hang on a minute. Yeah, I had that. Rings a bell. Went very heavily into the path of addiction, starting off at, 13 with kind of cannabis and onto ecstasy, the rave scene, heroin, crack cocaine, prison, all the trauma and stuff that comes with it. And I suppose
the numbing got a little out of control.
Yeah, why? I didn't even see it as numbing. See, I was just having a good time, but that was at a conscious level. At a subconscious level, it was kind of numbing, not being able to deal with life, all those things that we do. So I came into healing. I suppose I came in kicking and screaming. Really, I think the main one would have been when I went into rehab in 2010, and that was just because I literally just couldn't handle life on life's terms. I'd hit so many rock bottoms that you think, well, this is all right, I can't go any lower. And then lo and behold, you're like, oh no, I can go lower. So yeah,
you're almost tempting fate saying that, aren't you?
Like,
hello, universe, I can't go any lower. No, let's show you can.
yeah. No, we'll show you.
Can't you? Now you're out the other end. You can see that. At the time, it's like horrific, but amazing. So, was that a tough detox as well? Was it like straight in cruel, or was it? Because I read one of your your Instagram posts, which looked hardcore horrible.
Yeah, that would have been
was that one.
No, when I went to rehab, that was fairly soft and easy because I was addicted to alcohol and ketamine mainly, a bit of cocaine. So it's more of a psychological detox, that one. Which once I was in a safe environment, that was fine. The one you read would have been from the 14th January 2005, and that was the day that I got taken into Exeter prison, and I was in for attempted armed robbery on a post office, and I was doing a lot of injecting heroin and crack cocaine every day. And at the time, when you went into
cold turkey.
Yeah, well, when you went in, it varies different times, over the years. When I went in at that stage in 2005 in Exeter, they were saying, because we'd all go in and be like, "I can't go. Give us a bit of methadone or some Subutex or something to take the edge off." They're like, "No,
Yeah.
If you had a prescription from your GP on the outside, you're allowed to continue that." But I didn't, so it was that one was brutal. With hindsight, looking back, I'm grateful for that. At the time,
Yeah,
I definitely was not grateful. Far from grateful. But I didn't. I think.
Do you think because it was so hard, it kind of stopped you going into the depths of addiction again to that point where you'd have to go through that horrific a detox, or am I getting it wrong?
I'd say it played a part. I wouldn't say just that was enough, because I'd been through that a number of times before. If you're a semi-functioning heroin addict,
It's a vicious
that's part.
cycle.
This is just part of life. Do you know what I mean? That's your reality, is being ill, and it's horrendous kind of pain.
I've always been extremely grateful that when I started smoking, I literally had a cigarette and that was it. Like, I was so addicted so fast.
Yeah.
I've always thought, don't ever touch hard drugs.
No.
Thank goodness, because I do know I'd have been gone. So
Yeah.
I can see how it happens. Particularly, I've had the complex PTSD, so it would have been very easy to go that path. So yeah. So then you went into, so this is when you stopped drinking then?
So when I went into rehab, that was the difficult one for me psychologically, was alcohol, because alcohol's socially acceptable. So things like, I don't know,
it's easy to get. Like,
and
isn't it? It's just that it's in the supermarket. It's like it's everywhere. It's
social lubricant. Do you know what I mean? Like, people, things are changing a little bit, and the younger generation are slightly different, I'm finding. But certainly when I stopped in 2010, it was, people would be like, "What do you mean you don't drink?" Like, I've had people, someone said to me, "Do you want a beer?" I said, "No, thanks." They say, "Oh, do you want a vodka and stuff?" No, I'm good. I don't drink. And I've had people literally physically move back and go, "Ooh," like you've got some infectious disease. So that mentally,
it's crazy, isn't it? I stopped in 2020 just because I think it was part of the ascension that's going on around the world, really. But and I have a neighbor who's kept asking me in for a drink, and I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm fine, because I know their reaction will be like that if I go, "I don't drink." And I just can't. I just don't want to deal with it. So I'm just like, "Oh, yes, sorry, I'm busy. I've got something." Yeah, it's awful. That's awful.
Yeah,
I'm glad that at least for the youngsters, that's changing. That attitude.
There is change coming through. I meet quite a lot of people under 30 who don't drink just for, I don't really enjoy it. It doesn't make me feel great. I'm focusing on my fitness, that sort of thing. But for me, that was my whole lifestyle, like, way of being. I was a super sociable person who was out all the time. You can, when you're in the depths of addiction, if you're a heroin or crack addict, you can imagine a life without it. It's extremely hard to get out of it, but you can visualize a reality where you're not injecting heroin every day. If you're a functioning or semi-functioning alcoholic, the thing that people go to straight away is, a classic one that I used to hear would be, someone would be like, what am I going to do at Christmas? How am I going to celebrate on my birthday? What am I going to do at my daughter's wedding when I go to give her away? And it's like, "Oh, have you got a daughter? Have you?" No, I haven't got a daughter. But if I did, do you know what I mean? That's the stories that people tell themselves.
It's I hear what you're saying. It's funny, isn't it? Because I was just thinking about me dancing around the kitchen, right, as you were saying that. It's like, I don't need alcohol to do that now. But I kind of get the thinking, but at the same time, I don't get the thinking, because you don't need it to have a good time. It's like, "Oh, the alcohol makes me have a good time." It's like, no, you have a good time.
Yeah.
So what happened at that point, though, when you say, like, you went kicking and screaming into, did someone hold a mirror up to you, or what happened to start the journey to realizing what was going on?
I think I've done quite a few talks at, like, schools and things like that, and I always use the term, I was quite fortunate because I had the gift of desperation. So I had nowhere else to turn. Do you know what I mean? You when you get to a certain stage, you have three options. They are jails. I could go back to prison. nice option, believe it or not, because you're safe in there. You get fed. You have a routine. You get a decent gym. Do you know what I mean? Life's easy. You got institutions.
Okay, I've watched too much bad television. Clearly.
Yeah.
I didn't think jails were safe. Okay, interesting. Right. Okay.
It depends. It depends on
point
your
of view to my
perspective.
TV watching.
Yeah.
No, I know what you're saying though.
I was going to say go and try it, but don't do that. Institutions.
No. And I'm being a bit flippant, but strangely, I thought that would be a terribly unsafe place. So yeah. So institutions.
Institutions, which would be rehab centres, which is where I went, or mental asylums, which I would have been an absolutely banging candidate for at various points in time. So you've got jails, institution, and the third one's death. Kill yourself. When you're in that space, that can seem a very decent option. But the thing you don't realise in that moment is that suicide is a permanent problem, a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I've unfortunately lost a lot of friends over the years. I've been there myself and had multiple failed suicide attempts. And in that moment, that seems like the perfect solution. If I do this, all that will go away. Everyone else will be happy. I'll be doing everyone a favour. And it's only with hindsight that you manage to get out of the darkness and start living in the light a bit, that you can look back and reflect and go, actually, I'm bloody glad that didn't happen. Yeah. And, if you've ever been...
I'm bloody glad as well. Well, I grew up in what I call the ripple of a suicide. So my mother's first husband suicided. I mean, she was already a narcissist, but that just tipped her over the edge. And then she married my dad, who never really loved her, and on it goes. So it's like, on behalf of everybody that wasn't in your ripple because that didn't happen, thank you for it not happening.
Thank you.
It's and every time I see that, somebody's suicide, I'm like, oh, that poor family, because the ripple just goes on. It goes down generations. It's quite extraordinary. So you went to rehab. So do they have, what do they have in there? Counselors, coaches? Like, is there a process? How do they get you to look at your life and realize that you can change it?
I went there.
The tough questions are going on today, but after the weekend, no. I know you can cope.
Yeah, I love a tough question. Throw them at me. Give it to me.
Okay, here we go.
So it depends very much on... Rehabs are all different. The one I went to, I don't think... I haven't got much to base it against, but from conversations I've had with different people, I don't think it's a particularly good one. It shut down shortly after I went there. I think out of... The rates are never great for rehabs. Out of like 20 of us there, I think maybe 2 of us stay clean, but that's fairly common for rehabs, to be honest. Wow. They say your chances of success are about 5%, 1 in 20. I think that's a bit conservative. I think it's probably not even that high.
Wow.
So they have a process. I went through a 12-step rehab. I'm not here to promote any particular thing. For me, that worked well.
No, I just want to know what worked for you. That's Don't feel like you need to compare. Just what worked for you.
No. I suppose going through the process with a 12-step program, they get you to look at basically what's been done wrong to you, what you've done wrong, admitting to your mistakes, and it's basically a code for living that I still live by now. Like if I make a mistake, I promptly admit it. Once I've realised I made the mistake. Sometimes it takes minutes, sometimes weeks, sometimes years, but
sometimes it might take a few years.
There's probably still a couple sitting out there somewhere. But it's just basically being a decent human being. Do you know, like making amends. I think making amends is quite a big one, because most people who've been down that path have done some pretty crappy stuff. And there's certain amends that I can't make. So there's things like financial amends. If you stole something from a shop, you can go into the shop and say, look, I nicked this, here's a $5 or whatever. That's quite an easy one to sort out. But for example, with my mum, the amount of stress and angst and all the rest of the crap that I caused over the years, there's no way I can undo that. I can say sorry till I'm blue in the face, but you can't You can't undo it. So with things like that, I
What
have to
about,
make.
but surely she must look at you now, though, and the fact that you've stayed clean, that you've turned your life around, that you're making a success of it. You're inspiring other people to heal.
Well, that's
Surely
what.
that's actually
Yeah, well, that's what I
what
was
she
coming on
loves.
to. So you have direct
Oh,
amends, which
sorry.
is
I've just
giving
jumped
someone the
ahead.
money. But
Yeah.
yeah, indirect amends
Kind of
is
behavioral amends. Yeah.
is where you can't undo the damage. So therefore,
Mm,
you indirectly make amends, and basically, I sum it
mm,
up by not being a twat. Basically, do you know what I mean? If I
mhm.
act in a
Yeah.
decent way, don't act like an idiot, then by doing
Mm,
that, I am making amends going forward.
yeah.
So I
I
think
like
that,
that.
and once you start, I became quite a, I don't know what's the word, had a certain amount of acknowledgement of karma. You know what I've seen it in
Mhm.
business, I've seen it in relationships, I've seen it in financially, and you put out good things, and your life will go like that because that's how life goes. But if you keep doing the right thing, walk on the right side of the street, then life can become quite good.
Life, it turns around.
Yeah.
Well, was there like a source of the pain that you had to find and acknowledge to therefore be able to stop the addiction, or is it still with you? Like, how does it? Because I mean, you mentioned obviously there was it a one incident PTSD that you were able to deal with, or was it something like mine where it was like that repetitive trauma?
So
Because
when
actually, you
when
probably don't know my story, but
um when I was 4 years old, there was a extremely violent armed robbery at my house. I wasn't directly
oh wow, okay,
hurt or anything, but like my dad was beaten up with a
mhm,
baseball bat, knife to my mum, robbed the place, like really pretty savage. So I witnessed all of that, but it was the 1980s. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like,
mhm.
oh, he's got ADHD, oh, he's got this, there wasn't that pigeonholing. It
Yeah.
was like, well, the kid seems fine, so that's all right. On we go. And it's only,
At
like I say, it's
that
when.
incredibly critical age as well, it's really that
Yeah.
age where you feel responsible for everything as a 4-year-old.
Yep.
Like, my trauma was at 3, one specific incident, and it's like I felt responsible for it. You would have felt even though you weren't, it
Yeah.
would have been like, "Oh, mum and dad are upset or they're hiding or they're healing or they're hurt," and it's like, "It's all my fault," and we
Yep.
internalize it.
But
That's huge. Oh my goodness.
my
And it was the 80s. We didn't have help. I mean, I was the
yeah.
70s, but we didn't have help.
No.
We didn't have help. It's like,
No. It was
man.
what I because like I say, it was only when I heard a talk I did a workshop for Samaritans in 2019, and I heard
Yeah.
this army chaplain talking about PTSD. He's out in Afghan, like picking up the mental pieces from the soldiers coming back in. It's a horrendous job.
Mm,
And he started describing PTSD, and I was just like, hang on a minute, that he's describing my childhood.
yeah.
And one of the interesting things that I knew all the way through my childhood, I've got a very
Mm,
clear, vivid recollection of that night. My recollection of
yes.
events is completely different to what happened. So I've just started writing my book, and I open up the opening chapter is the robbery. So my mum's gone through with me in detail, like exactly what happened step by step. And I've
Mm.
got what actually happened and my version of events, and they are worlds apart. So I recreated the whole event, and I believed that
Ah,
till.
but so will she have so try and get this out in one go. She will have as well. So it's
Yeah.
quite interesting because I've been doing a thing about like getting the stories because I detached from my trauma through memory loss. So I've had to like
Yep.
call in my sister and stuff like that, like help me here.
Yep.
But it's how we remember stuff. And we do all remember it differently depending on what experiences we'd had at that time. And then we change it. Every time we remember it, we change it.
Yeah.
So it's like she'll have changed it as well. So don't
Yep.
be too hard on yourself if they're completely different. I'm not
Yeah.
surprised you were 4, but it's still interesting if she goes like really stands firm and you're like, but I really felt this. I really remember this
Well, to
because
me,
you
it
may be
was
right.
fine. There was a 4-year-old boy stood next to me in my room who I didn't know, but I felt quite safe with, and he said we're going to
Mhm.
play a game, and you got to walk across the other side of the room, but watch out for little bits of plastic. And it's a game
Yeah.
and it's a race. and I felt quite safe, quite
Yeah.
secure. Of course, it wasn't plastic; it was glass from my window that had just been smashed in. So there's glass all over the floor. Yet this little boy was telling me that little boy doesn't exist. Like nobody else has ever seen or heard of this little boy, but I can remember with absolute vivid accuracy how I felt, and everything was fine, and I just had three guys smash through my bedroom window and jump on my bed. So yeah, interesting.
I'm thinking about what we were talking about before you came on, though, with some of our Claire skills that we have. I wonder if at 4 you were open and something helped you, whether it was a past soul or an angel or something. I wonder if that's what actually
100%.
happened. So that's why you were recollecting it like that, because it
100%.
gets shut down usually after that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I can vaguely. I can't remember any incidents like that.
We're
But
both
I
struggling to speak today.
Yeah, I can remember.
I'm not surprised. That weekend was full on intense information, wasn't it? And it's like it's only, where are we? Wednesday. I'm still processing. So sorry, I interrupted you yet again. Big shock.
No worries. I can remember my cousins at a very young age all taking the mick out of me because I had like imaginary friends. So there's a lot of children have imaginary friends, and I think a lot of that is that openness, and they're still connected to something else that's not necessarily in the visual reality dimension, whatever that we're in. They're still connected into something else.
Unseen.
So that's my
absolutely
thoughts on what happened there.
Yeah, so I've written about past lives because I've had 4 past life regressions, and there's evidence. They've interviewed like 3,000 children under a certain age, and they can all perfectly recall their last past life, and it's like there's evidence. Like, what more do we need?
Yeah.
So how's your memoir? What's your plan with it? What are you? So you said you started writing. Is that helping you heal as well?
Yeah. So I've been
really
told
therapeutic, I tell you.
since probably my mid-20s, random people from all different walks of life have come up to me and said, "You need to write a book." And I've been like, "Oh yeah, I'm not a writer. Do you know what I mean? I don't enjoy writing. Why would I write a book?" And then after the 150th person, I was like, "Do you know what? I'll just write a book." In the first instance,
I'll write 1 page and see what happens.
Yeah. In the first instance, I'm writing it for myself. The cathartic exercise of there's been, I believe, looking back with hindsight, that I've actively sought out trauma my whole life. Do you know what I mean? I'm not consciously, but subconsciously, addiction, prison, crime, cage fighting, jumping out of aeroplanes, surf. It just, if it's dangerous, I'm like, oh, what's that? So
I wonder if that's somehow related to the fact that you just didn't have fear. Or I wonder if that somehow helps numb the fear. I mean, thinking of the crazy stuff you've done of late, jumping out of planes, etc. I'm wondering if that helps numb, that adrenaline rush helps numb some of that trauma still. I wonder.
It's something about the adrenaline, but I grew up flooded with anxiety. I'm not someone who's
of course.
Like lot of the guys I train with, they're hard people. Do you know what I mean? They've grown up fighting their whole life. They're fairly fearless, some of them. They're just hard. I'm not hard. I'm soft. Naturally, I'm a very soft person. So I forced myself into those situations.
Right.
Just to, I think, overcome the fear. But there's also something about the adrenaline. It's probably within the addiction pattern. Addicted to.
Are you doing something actively for your PTSD? Because I promise you can heal it if you have not.
Yeah,
they say that you can't, but you can. Like, I know people who have.
I've done various things like I've done bits of NLP, hypnosis, regression stuff, but yeah, day to day, I don't feel that. I think where it affected me most was probably up to the age of about 16. I just burst into floods of tears at the slightest little thing. So yeah, I just kind of, like I say, it's never been diagnosed or anything like that. It's just what I've pieced together over the years.
Yeah. Try inner child work. because that can be really, really amazing, because you can then tap back into that 4-year-old and give him all of that love and support that you needed at that moment that you didn't necessarily get because your parents were dealing with everything they were going through, and it was the 80s, so we just stiff upper lipped everything, didn't we?
Get on with it.
It was the same in Australia. Like it's very similar in that. Let's not talk about it. Now everyone's talking about it. So that could be really amazing, because that really, really helped me, was the inner child work. So the way Michelle Zelly and I write about this explains it. We've got a functional adult who's talking now, the inner teenager who you've met quite a few times in your life, and then the inner child. So when the inner child feels scared, if the functional adult doesn't step in and provide support, out comes that inner teenager. And then that's the one you don't really want to come out, because that's the one that's likely to do the addiction and the door slamming and the fighting and the adrenaline and whereas actually sometimes it's like, and it's so easy. I mean, there's meditation. I mean, obviously the best route is through a therapist to really understand what you're doing, or a coach. But there are meditations. I mean, I just sometimes sit and like self-soothe, or I just talk to her and say, I've got you, because I can feel now. And she's like squirming, sometimes doing somersaults. If I'm about to go and do something that's a bit, unusual, she's like, wait a minute, what's going on? It's okay, I've got you, mate. I've got you. It's all good. You don't have these kind of conversations. It could help. It's just, I don't understand why there's not more inner child work out there. Because everyone I know who's had that process, like, oh, that's so good. So could be worth exploring. So what's next in your great empire that you're building? I mean, talk about turning around your life. So you now coach, is that right? You've got a property business? I mean,
so my background is property development, and I've always done not mass scale, but I do very bespoke high-end period properties. I've created 2 high-end holiday lets that pull in a very nice passive income that allow me to go off to Bali through the winter, which I'll be doing next month.
And write books.
I do business
Bali
coaching.
Must be so tough. I don't know how you cope with Bali.
Honestly, it's rough. You're sweating.
Sorry
all day.
About all the Australians in Cuba, though.
Well, we got to put them somewhere. I try to avoid Kuta, not for that reason, but
God, so would I.
So I've had a lot of success in a variety of different industries. So holiday lets, manufacturing, construction. So I do business coaching, helping. I got quite a specific type of client. They need to be extremely driven and just get on with stuff. As I'm not dragging anyone with me. But that's really interesting, because I just love business. I love how businesses work. I'm also writing my book, which I learned at the weekend is a teaching memoir. I'd never heard of that term.
Teaching memoir. I'd never heard of it either.
No, I was like, oh.
Well, at one point they put up the Piatkas logo, and Judy Piatkas is actually my second cousin, who I found not that long ago. And she said at one point, oh, this sounds a bit like a misery memoir. And I went, no. Like, but so to hear teaching memoir was like, oh, this is amazing. But she hasn't been in the publishing game for a little while, so potentially it's a new. I feel like they're quite new, these teaching memoirs. So I found the word count thing really strange, though, because they were going on about how few words, and mine is 80,000. I'm having to cut it down, and then I'm looking at like this one, and this must be 90,000, and I will happily sit and read this. This is about complex PTSD. So I'm like, why does it have to be so short? Anyway, very odd. That'll be the hardest bit, is just making something that's 70,000 words. They even said 50 to 60,000 at one point. You're at the beginning. You're probably like, I'm going to get to 10,000. It'll be a miracle.
Yeah, something like that. I was saying that I wrote.
You wait until you start writing.
Well, I've done the first 3 chapters. I thought it was the first chapter, but then I realised it was about 10,000 words or something. I was like, oh no, there's actually 3 different chapters here. So I can see how it is. I think you just got to get it. You just got to get it all out to start off with, and then get that first draft done, and then start fine tuning. And it'll be write everything out, all the stories, and then work out which ones are relevant and which ones you can pull the teaching out of, and which ones will ultimately help other people.
Yeah, that's the bit I'm going to go back and just check. I think I lost my core message on the way through. I think I overshared. So that was good because I did go up to one of the commissioning editors and check. So for anyone listening who's ready to purchase it, it'll be better.
Yeah.
And slightly shorter.
Yeah.
I still feel like it's a rip-off. You pay all this money and the book's shorter. I'm like, that's how I look at it, weirdly. Yeah. Like it needs to be fatter and have more stories in it. But I know it's exciting. I did enjoy it. And I think that just how many people in the room were writing. But one of the big things I took away was like right from the scar, not the wound. Yeah. And I thought that was amazing. You know, when some people got up to speak and they were still crying, I was like, wow, I'm glad I'm writing from the scar. But that was quite emotional, wasn't it? To watch.
I thought it was really, like, for me, I know a lot of the people there were readers, writers, do you know what I mean? That's what they're about. So from my perspective, I don't come from that background. I'm not a writer. Do you know what I mean? I don't, other than Instagram posts, I don't write anything. So for me, it was, I just found it a really good, easy to understand, really well put together weekend. It was just what I needed, really.
So actually, I think you said healers. They were, weren't there? There were a lot of healers in the room, but then there were a lot of people with really interesting backgrounds who weren't, and that I didn't expect to be in that specific room, yourself included, because it's very spiritual, isn't it? So, but it was exciting. So, well, I can't wait to see it. That's for sure. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, book you to speak about this, or just look at your coaching, whatever, where's the best place to find you?
The easiest place at the moment is probably Instagram, and that's georgebannister_com. The other option is my website, which hopefully by the time this is out will be ready, but it's still work in progress at the moment. And that is georgebannister.com. So that's all about...
Yeah, I saw that was a work in progress. It made me chuckle.
Yeah.
They're not easy. They're not easy.
It's been a work in progress for... I think it's since August, something like that. So it's about 3 months. But the problem is,
not so bad.
I keep evolving faster than my website copy evolves. So I'll kind of get into a new area and I'll be like, no, that needs rewriting, and kind of. But it's good. It's that transformation process,
that's when you call in an expert. Like, if you're really struggling with it, call an expert in.
Oh no, I always work with coaches on everything I do. So that's with experts on the case as well.
Oh, well, at some point next year. Anyway, thank you so much for this.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Just saying thank you for inviting me on.
Amazing and beautiful open conversation, which is just so lovely. We need more of that, particularly from you boys. We need more of that open conversation. So thank you so much.
Cool.
Thank you for tuning in to Beyond the Damage of Words. How brave, how vulnerable, all to inspire listeners like you to take a step or inspire others to take a step. Imagine what healing we could create if we normalize this conversation. So please pass this on and of course subscribe so we can do just that. Until next time, thank you.